All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our community webinar on the Ronald Reagan Corridor Planning Project. My name is Avalon Powell. I am the marketing manager for Braun Gresham, and I'll be assisting our presenter, Patrick L. Reznik, with moderating questions this evening. So this webinar is scheduled for approximately an hour. Our condemnation attorney, Patrick, will discuss the project details, the current known status of the project, next steps, and what to do if you're facing condemnation. So we will address questions at any time during the presentation. If you have one, you can either raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button on your toolbar. And that toolbar should be located at either the top or the bottom of your Zoom screen. After clicking that raise hand button, I will unmute you and you can talk directly into your microphone. If you'd prefer not to speak directly, you can also submit your questions through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So to access that, you will click the Q&A button on your toolbar and it will open a separate pop-up box where you can type your questions directly in. And then after the webinar, we will follow up with an email with a copy of this presentation's recording. We will have our contact information listed. So if you have any additional questions, or if you'd like to schedule a consultation with Patrick and his team, you can do so that way. And so now, Patrick, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Avalon, and welcome everyone. I really appreciate your participation this evening. This is very informal. If you have questions along the way, please ask either through the chat or raise your hand as Avalon suggested. It may only take about 45 minutes depending on what your questions are, but I do want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what may be ahead of you. And we're going to limit this to the Ronald Reagan Corridor project. There's lots of things that are happening in Williamson County right now. Hayes County and other counties in Central Texas. I mean, everybody knows there's a lot of people moving into this area and there's lots of activity. There's lots of infrastructure that is needed, and roads are a part of that. And this project is a Williamson County project that they've had on their long-term transportation plan for quite a while. And I wish I could give you more specifics as far as timing, because that is one of the most anxious things from a landowner perspective. And I only represent landowners in condemnation proceedings. I don't represent condemning authorities, whether it's a city, a county, a pipeline company, a transmission line company, and TxDOT, of course, is represented by the Attorney General's office. So that's not something that I would be able to do, and I don't want to. I limit my practice to just representing landowners because I have a very passion for landowners. I come from Texas, landowners, ranching, farming background, have been representing landowners in these type of proceedings for a very, very long time. I understand the process, and it could be very intimidating for people who have not been condemned because you don't have control over what's happening to your property, whether it's a small property or a large property. And I want to work through those issues this evening. And we have a lot to cover, but there's certainly time, and I'll talk as much as we know about the details of the project. Your rights under eminent domain, which is also condemnation. Eminent domain is the legal right that condemning authorities have, including Williamson County or Georgetown or Round Rock or Liberty Hill, to take your land for a particular project, whether it's a road, a wastewater line, a water line, something else. They have the right to do that. We'll talk about those, but you do have rights. I'll give you one case study. I can give you hours and hours of case studies if you're interested. And if you call me on a consultation, we could talk more about those sort of things and what to expect when the time happens that you're contacted about maybe your land being taken for this particular road project. So this is, as I mentioned, part of Williamson County's long-term transportation plan, which is on their website. And when we say long-term, we really mean long-term. If you've driven through Oak Hill recently, which is West Austin, into Dripping Springs area. That's on 290. That project at Oak Hill started in the late 80s. And they're just now building that project. They're just now in the midst of actual construction. So these projects can happen over an extended period of time. A lot of it has to do with finances. Where's the money coming? So Williamson County has broken this into 5 different projects, 5 segments, and they're all equally important because they affect landowners, but we don't know exactly what the progress is on any of these except for one, and that's Corridor B, which is this dark green area. We know that that's going to happen first. So we have Corridor A, which is the light green, B, the dark green, C, the gray, D, the dark blue, and E, the light blue. So it's connecting I-35 all the way down here to 2243, basically as part of a long-term loop that is going to happen eventually, I believe, around I-35 and come back and connect to Ronald Reagan. As we know, Ronald Reagan is a very busy highway, and it's expanded, and they're looking to expand it even more and connect to I-35. These are in essence called arterial roads because they're connecting new developments, new uh, areas where new housing is coming in, new commercial properties are coming in. So this is going to happen over a period of years. We know that segment B is currently funded for construction. And this is the project that's going to happen the soonest. Of course, if you go to the websites, they say, well, it's going to happen in the summer of 2023. Well, that hasn't happened because we're in August of 2023 and the project is still not moving forward. The information on the websites is never up to date. And that's very frustrating for you as landowners who may or may not be impacted by these projects because the designs are still happening and we don't know the full details yet. The other segments aside B, A, C, D, and E, all 5 of these projects have companies such as engineering companies that are the right-of-way agents who are contracted by the county to contact you, ask permission for surveying the property and going through the process that we'll talk about in this condemnation. But there's the funding is the huge issue, and we'll keep our eye out and we monitor these projects. Right now, other than B, these other A, C, D, and E, which reminds you, this is A right here. This is the B, C, D, and E. They will happen at some point in time, but we just don't know when. But we have our website that if you go to the website, we'll keep you updated there, or you can email me or Avalon or one of the members of our team and ask for additional information. Let's talk about the eminent domain process. Eminent domain, again, is the right that the county has in this particular situation to condemn property. The condemnation is the process by which landowners go through. They're being forced to do it. Now, I really dislike the idea that condemning authorities also often call this a sale. This is not a sale. This is not something that you're doing by your own free will, that you're wanting to do, most likely, but you're being condemned. So it's not a sale. So there's tax issues that we won't talk about this evening that are related to that, but it's not a sale. It's a condemnation of your property. It's a taking by a governmental entity of your property. The Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution gives this right. You have to be compensated if the governmental authority has the right, which Williamson County does. Texas Constitution talks about adequate compensation. And then Chapter 21 of the Texas Property Code is the ruling, basically, rules of procedure that the condemning authorities have to go through. And we'll talk about what Chapter 21 of the Property Code requires. So let's look at it from your perspective as a landowner. What are your rights? Well, here's a basic example of what is the impact to your property? So if you look at this image and your property is the green and the red, and the red is what's being taken from your property, well, what's the value of that? We go back to these, constitutional provisions. It says compensate, adequate compensation. And then chapter 21 talks also about compensation. That's where the big discussion comes in. If they have the right to do that, which, Williamson County does, then what is the value of what they're taking? And then what is your rights and the impact that it has on your property? So the technical terms that we talk about all the time in this profession, and I've been doing this for a long time for landowners around Texas and especially in the Texas Hill Country area, which includes Williamson and Hayes and Travis and outlying areas, which could be Blanco or Caldwell or Gonzales. I mean, there's so much happening in these counties around the Austin area. What is the value of what they're taking from you? What is the price of the property that they're taking on this part taking in the red? And what is the impact to the rest of the property? I have a case right now, which is a wastewater line in Hayes County, and they are taking the well as part of this wastewater line. So they're going to have to pay my client to put another well in, a water well. Well, during this drought, can you imagine the stress that they're going through right now? And are they going to get another water well that's going to produce as much water as they have right now? It's a very stressful process. I'm not gonna soften that. It just is a very stressful process that we have to go through on this. And what is the impact to the rest of the property? And whether it's the buildings that may be impacted, the water well, access issues, there's all sorts of issues that could happen. Do you still have a driveway to get to your property after they take your driveway? So there's lots of things that we have to talk about and explore, depending on your property, what the situation of your property is, and what the condemning authority, Williamson County in this case, is taking. As a landowner, you have rights to see if there's impacts to the rest of your property. If the rest of your property is devalued because of what the governmental authority is doing, then the way the Texas Supreme Court looks at this is what is the value of your property before and what's the value of the property after the particular taking? And that's the basic bottom line. If you look at it from a market standpoint, what is the value of my property now? And after the government takes a part of my property, what's the value of my property after that? So that's the damages to the remainder portion. And there's all sorts of things that could be included in that regard. We have a chat, Avalon. I don't know if somebody's asked a question or.
That was just me. I had chatted to everybody the link to our project page where we'll
Okay,
post updates as
cool.
we learn more.
All right. So let me give y'all just a real life example. This is a property in Bear County on 281 that I represented the client, and was a commercial property, and it had buildings that were being taken out, and it had land that was being taken, and they had a little bit of the property that was left. And if you go back to here, remember what's taken is in the red and what's left. Well, what was left was very small. It was a very, very, very small sliver, not near as big as this. But the case study was that our position, the market value of the land was 2.9, something around that range. We had buildings, there were improvements, and the value of those properties were around 1.9 million for a total of 4.7 million. That is the value of the whole property before the taking. Well, they took the buildings out. Okay, so there's zero left for the value of the buildings, but they were still a sliver of land that was left. And so the value of that land was about $1.1 million with what was left. And then they needed some easements that were temporary to access the property for construction. And our appraiser valued that at a little over $4,000. So if you take the 4.7 minus the 1.1, add in the 4.8, our damages were at 3.6. I don't have on this slide the number that TxDOT in this case had offered, but it was around 2.4. So we were $1.2 million different between what they were offering and what we believed the total value was. And so we actually went to a commissioner's hearing, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. So, oh, there you go. 2.4 as what the TxDOT's appraisal was. We were at 3.6. So the difference is 1.2, and the special commissioners who were appointed to hear this case, I don't remember exact number they gave, but they gave very close to this number of the 3.6, which was an additional compensation of 1.2 to our client in this particular case. Now, let's talk about the process a little bit. Every property is different. So all of my clients, I ask them to develop a wish list. What is it that you would like to get out of this process? Well, regardless of the money, is there other issues? I mean, is it a better driveway? Is it a new road across the property? Is it utility lines that are going to have to be relocated that we want to negotiate? It could be all sorts of different things because every property is different. So times like this, we may have to have not only me as your lawyer, but we may have to have an appraiser. I have a case coming up on Thursday in Fort Worth that has an appraiser, a land planner, and a civil engineer because TxDOT is diverting water from one side of the expressway to our client's property. So all that water is going to increase flow on our property, and we have to figure out how to divert that water. So we have a civil engineer. We have to completely redevelop the property to take in consideration of what they're taking. And then we have an appraiser that talks about the land value and building estimators. In this particular case that I was talking about, we had a building estimator who looked at what is the value of the buildings, depreciated value of the buildings that are being taken out. And we're going to have to put that into the appraisal. So it's not just the attorneys, but there's other experts that may have to be involved in a particular case, depending on your situation. Now, the process is very pursuant to Chapter 21 of the Property Code, which you talked about, and it's got several phases to it. Right now, we're still in the design and development phase with Williamson County, but at some point in time, especially on Corridor B, the landowners who are going to be impacted are going to get a call and a letter to say, listen, we are going to be redesigning, rebuilding this road, and you're going to be impacted. So we'd like to survey your property. So that's the call, the visit or letter from a landman, which will be one of the engineering companies that we listed, in order to contact you to have permission to get on your property. By law, you have to allow them on the property. But we have right of entry agreements that we like to negotiate in order to limit where they can go and how much time they can spend on your property and when they have to leave. So the forms that they send just give you a blanket opportunity to say, come on anytime, day or night, onto our property, any part of the property that you want, you have free access. I don't recommend that. I think we need to limit the authority that they have, and we can negotiate that. Then the phase two starts negotiating what are the terms of your compensation. And then if we don't reach an agreement on that, then we go to what's called the special commissioner's hearing. That's phase three. And then if either side, the condemning authority or the landowner, does not like what the special commissioners awarded, you're back in district court or county court at law, depending on the county where we are in. And so let's talk a little bit more in detail about each of these phases. So you've got somebody that shows up that says they're just trying to, look at your best interest. Well, my opinion is they're being hired by the condemning authority. They're being hired by Williamson County. They don't have your best interest at heart. They have the county's best interest at heart. But we have to be cooperative because you're not going to stop this from happening. So if you stop the survey or prevent people from getting on a survey, they can go to court, get an injunction, and allow them to prevent you from not allowing them to survey the property. So this is a time we just negotiate, we communicate, we cooperate because we don't have any leverage at this level. Now the phase two is the offer. They're going to give you a written offer of some compensation. And it may be shockingly low, or it may be, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, what we do at no charge is review the offer and decide whether we think it's low or we think it's a good offer. If we think it's a good offer, we'll tell you it's a good offer. I don't think I can do better for you, so go ahead and accept the offer. But if I do think I can do better for you, then we work out some sort of financial arrangement. Usually it's on a contingency fee that whatever I get you above the first offer, I get a percentage of that, depending on the size of the property and the type of taking as we're talking about. That could vary. So that would be a discussion that we would have on an individual basis. It's not something that's just set on, we do this way on every case. But everything is negotiable, whether it's the compensation, whether it's the value of what happens to the remainder, what happens with like a driveway cut, as we talked about. Do you get a driveway cut back to where you had it? What does it look like? Is it of the same material? Are you getting to use the property for the same use that you used it before they took the land for this new road? Or are you restricted? Is a city, are you in the city where there's some sort of city requirements that say, hey, you can't do this anymore because of your property? Their regulatory restrictions and city entitlements can be a big part of these negotiations, depending on, again, the property, what the property is being used for, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, and how those are going to be impacted. The initial offer and final offer are regulated by Chapter 21 Texas Property Code. So when you get an initial offer of compensation, it'll give you a 30-day deadline. It may not say 30 days, but they have to give you 30 days in order for you to respond. You don't have to respond. If you don't respond, it's okay. What they do then is go into the second offer, which is the 14-day final offer. The 30-day offer is strictly regulated by Chapter 21 of the Property Code. If within 30 days we don't reach a resolution, then they have to give you a 14-day final offer, which says you have 14 days to respond. If you don't respond, then we're going to file a petition and condemnation. That really is the trigger point by which I really encourage people to go ahead and contact a lawyer, whether it's me or somebody else. Go ahead and talk to somebody, because you need to understand, is the offer that you've been given a good offer? Is it a reasonable offer? If it's not, and what is the process going forward? It really is the critical time in order to consult with an attorney who specializes in the eminent domain law condemnation process, and is very familiar with the counties or governmental entities who are doing the taking. So again, the 30-day, the 14-day are regulated by Chapter 21 of the Property Code. If for some reason we can't work out a resolution during the first two phases, then you get sued. That's a petition and condemnation. That scares a lot of people. I don't care whether you're a landowner of whatever use, or developer, or commercial property, or residential property. It's all the same. For them to go through and check off Chapter 21 of the Texas Property Code requirements, the next part is filing a petition and condemnation. At that point in time, when a petition is filed, and it will lay out what they're taking, it will lay out the area, the survey. It'll be very detailed as far as the type of land that they're taking, how much land that they're taking. If it's not a TxDOT taking or a county taking for a road, it could be an easement. There's also times where a water line company or a transmission line company or a wastewater line company, they take easements. a gas company, petroleum company. The easements mean that they take a right to use the property to put in the infrastructure, but you still own the property. And this particular case with Williamson County, they're going to be actually taking the land, so they're going to own it. You will not own the property anymore. And that's the difference between taking in fee, as we call it, versus taking a interest in a easement. But regardless, the process is the same. And once the petition is filed, then the judge where the lawsuit is filed will appoint 3 landowners who are resident landowners in Williamson County in this case. So they own land, they reside there. 3 of those will decide compensation at this administrative level. And this is an administrative part of the process before we get to the phase 4. And it's a very informal hearing. There are the 3 landowners. A lot of times they're appraisers, sometimes they're attorneys, sometimes they're realtors, but a lot of times they have a understanding of appraisal methodology, because that is a unique idea of how you determine valuation. And in some situations, like the example that I showed you, you can be lots of dollars apart between what their offer is and what we believe compensation should be. They only decide compensation. And after that hearing, then Williams County has a right to go ahead and possess the property and start construction on your property, even though we may not have settled on the compensation, because at the level 4, we object to the award if we think it's too low, or Williamson County could object to the award if they think it's too high. And then you're basically at the trial level, you're back into court, and then you have to decide, do you want to go before a jury or not go before a jury and try to settle the case? This is a complicated and detailed, very specific process that is not well laid out for landowners. Landowners receive a Bill of Rights, they receive all this information, a ton of paperwork, and it can be very confusing. The worst thing that you can do is ignore it and not talk to me or somebody that can have explained to you the process and whether or not you're being treated fairly according to the US Constitution and the Texas Constitution and Chapter 21 of the Texas Property Code. This is one of the areas that we are experts in. You really want to talk to somebody who does this on a real basis, that's a routine. And again, I only represent landowners, so I'm not influenced by condemning authorities, the counties, the cities, the pipeline companies, the transmission line companies. My main interest is protecting you as a landowner and your rights. The idea of a 30-minute consultation is very available to you. You can contact me by email. You can go with this info. You can call our number. Audrey Banner is my paralegal. She'll be happy to talk to you. She's very, very knowledgeable about you, about this process, and is very helpful. We really want to make sure landowners are informed about what their rights are, what the process is, and what to expect. Because when it does happen, goes very, very fast. And what we're trying to do with these seminars, and we're going to do more of these with lots of projects that are happening in Williamson County, is to inform landowners who may be impacted about what the process looks like. So when you get the letter about wanting to survey the property, you're understanding what your rights are and what you can and can't do. For example, you can't stop them from surveying, or a court order will be issued. But you do need to know from an appraisal standpoint, what is the value of your property that's being taken and what is the impacts? And it could be so many different things depending on the project and how it does impact your particular property. So it is not a template that each property is the same and is going to be treated the same. Again, my name is Patrick Reznik. This is my email address, and I want Avalon to talk about our website and what information can be obtained within our website. But this is my office number, personal email address. Please contact us if you have any questions, either now or after this presentation, or as Williamson County moves forward. You can actually take a picture of this scan code and sign up for information. We will be sending out newsletters. We send out a couple of newsletters every month related to landowners. And as this project moves forward, we will be sending an email to anybody who's signed up for this landowner alert system and informing them about where the county is in the process. And so this is a very good way to just stay informed. And if you don't like to or be interested in whatever is in that particular email, you don't have to click on the links. It is a very simple email that comes in and has links on it. If you're interested, you can click on it. If not, you move on, because I know everybody gets so many emails every day, so many text messages every day. We will not be texting you, but this is a wonderful way at your discretion if you want to stay informed about what's happening in these particular projects. So I will give it back to Avalon for some additional follow-up, and if there's any questions.
Yeah, we did have one come through, Patrick. They were wanting to see if we could talk a little bit more about the area that's being impacted. I did want to note, we have a GIS mapper. So if you wanted to reach out directly after this webinar, we can have her pull up your particular parcel of land. We'll just need to know your property address, and we can look at kind of directly where your property is affected along this line and what that potential take may look like. Sorry, you go ahead too, Patrick.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we this is a very difficult for some landowners, because if your land is not being impacted directly, then you don't get compensated. But if you're going to be looking at this new roadway, but your land is not being taken, you're going to be impacted by more traffic, more noise, more, you know, issues related to exhaust, whatever it is. But you don't get compensated, because that's considered what's called a community damage under the Texas Supreme Court law. It says, well, if your land's not being taken, you don't get impacted, even though you may experience greater noise levels, greater pollution levels, greater whatever it is, traffic lights at night. That's just absorbed by the community as a whole, unless Williamson County is taking some of your land, you don't get compensated. And if you have a property right next to this that's not directly impacted by taking a property, and you have all these changes to the way that you use your property now and your way of life, there's no compensation for that. And that is a devaluation of your property, in my opinion, but I can't help you get compensation for that because the law does not allow it, unfortunately.
If
So it's
anybody,
really important to know if the project directly impacts you or is close to you. And if it's close to you, you may have a decision to make on whether or not you want to, stay there or sell the property and move someplace else. So
yeah, we've got here's one particular attendee that just shared their experience right now, and you may have some comments on it, Patrick. So they were contacted and visited by a team in late 2020 and early 2021. The surveyors have already been on their property and they are on Section B. So what would you suggest to them moving forward?
So if you've been contacted already and they've already surveyed, then what I would like to do is have a consultation with you, look at what the impact may be, and give you some advice on what may happen going on in the future. Because uh, more information is better. It just is. And the better informed that you are, the better off that you are. Whether it's helpful information, yes, it will be. Whether it's good information, it may or may not be. And when I say good information, happy information, because it may not be something that you want to happen in your life, but at least you know what the impact is. And I'd be happy. I'm very well known by the Williamson County authorities, everybody that is doing this sort of stuff. So I could always make a phone call and say, hey, we need to know more about how this particular property is being impacted. You've surveyed the property, but we don't have any additional data to know exactly what the design is. And they may come back and say, well, our designers are still looking at it. We still don't know. But having those communications with the authorities in charge, whether it's a county or one of the representatives, is always helpful. So regardless of whether you like it or not, more information is better information. It just is.
Yeah. And they had added in that they've already identified the acreage that they thought at the time they would want, but they haven't heard anything from since early 2021. Is that typical?
It is. It is. These projects take years. And the reality is the design may change because infrastructure is changing so rapidly. What they don't want to have to do is take out buildings. So, but in a couple of years, there may be more buildings that are in the way, and so they're going to redesign the project in order not to take out buildings. So, what's happening in a lot of these projects is they're taking what's called a 300-foot corridor. So they may not need that 300-foot corridor now, but they will in the future. So in order to take more land now, they have the ability to expand the project later on without the concern of having buildings or businesses or homes that are built in that, and they have to go back and condemn and take out houses or homes or businesses or anything of that nature. So it's really stressful for landowners because we don't know the exact timing. And while they have some funding, those funds are being distributed in all sorts of different areas right now. So we have a situation in Hayes County right now where a bond was passed to build new roads. Well, all that money has now been spent, and so the new roads that they had anticipated on building, there's no funding for that. So they're going to have to go back and get additional bonds or find some federal sources for dollars in order to start building some of these projects. So money has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. On this project map, Patrick, could you explain the color legend there?
Yeah. So and Avalon, I think we have the official website from the county on our particular website, but
We do.
the green, this light green is the segment A, the dark green is segment B, which is has some funding to move forward. So what we anticipate is this segment from 29 to 3405 will be the first project that will be built. And then you have the gray, which is C, the dark blue, which is a D, and the light blue, which is E, connecting I-35. So as you can see, you've got the existing Ronald Reagan, and they're going to try eventually to get up to I-35 to divert a lot of traffic. And so that's what we're getting directly from Williamson County's websites. And I have attended several meetings where the long-term transportation officials are presenting these ideas. And again, we'll stay on top of it because it's an ever-changing process and timing and funding. And what we want is to be able to give landowners such as yourselves updated information as soon as we get it.
And this map, and the link that I published in the chat for everybody, this map is available on our webpage. So if you go to that webpage and save that on your browser, this will always live there. As we learn more about the project, we will publish those updates on that webpage. Also, if you want to sign up for our LAS newsletter, I oftentimes provide updates about these road projects on that newsletter. So whenever we learn more about this particular project, that will also be published there.
And let me add the landowner alert system that we have. We have great feedback from not only clients, but from people who just want to know more information. Again, we're not trying to solicit using this service. We're just trying to provide information. And if it's valuable information for you, and then you want to call us and set up a consultation, we're happy to do that. But this simply is signing up for a service that is information about land ownership around the state of Texas, projects that are going forward, laws that are changing. What I'm finding right now, a lot is what's happening with the snowpocalypse that we've gone through, with the heat that we've gone through, with the governor's demand to increase the infrastructure around the state of Texas for transmission lines, for example. All the transmission line companies and co-ops are building transmission lines like crazy right now. LCRA, for example, is upgrading a lot of their old transmission lines. So a lot of people have bought property that have an old transmission line on the property, and that's being upgraded. And they're like, well, wait a minute, how come they're on my property upgrading the system? How do they have the right to do that? There most likely is an old easement from the 40s, 50s, 60s that gives them the right to do that. But that's something that we can review and explain to you as a landowner about that particular process, because infrastructure is changing a lot around the state of Texas. And as communities grow, as demands grow, we need more electricity, we need more water, we need more wastewater, we need more gas, we need more, all those sort of things, which means your property may be at risk at being condemned for one of those particular projects. And the road infrastructure, until we get a better transportation system done, roads are the way that people get around, and that's going to increase more county projects, local projects, and TxDOT is expanding every big highway structure that they have in the state of Texas. It's just a matter of when and then the impact to landowners. So there's a lot happening in a very fast growing state.
Well, and on the topic of different projects, we had a question if you have heard about the 183 expansion.
We're monitoring the 183 expansion. Of course, if you're on 183, you know where the toll has moved and where the expansion is happening now. There are plans to go ahead and go farther north. Eventually, I think this may actually take 183 all the way to Lampasas, but for right now, there are new corridors. Avalon, you may remember the corridor. I can't remember if it's corridor F, H, or one of those. But where the construction is happening now, there are plans, excuse me, for taking that project farther north, and we are monitoring that project. So if you have property or know somebody has property on the north side of where the construction is happening now, that is happening in the near future. And that's a project we are continuing to monitor as well. And most likely we'll do a webinar on that one in the near future.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that may be all of our questions for the evening. But if something comes to mind afterwards, if you don't mind flipping back to your contact slide, Patrick, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I am also going to send a follow-up email tomorrow morning. It will include a copy of this webinar recording. It will include our contact information. So if you don't jot it down furiously here in the next minute, you'll have it that way too. Don't hesitate to reach out to us as you think of those questions. If you'd like to schedule a consultation to talk specifically about your project, or maybe you'd like to get that parcel map to see kind of where your project falls along this project, I'm happy to get that for you. Otherwise, thank y'all so much for taking your time this evening to hear about this project with us.
I will address the fact that I love going in to meet with people as a group. So if anybody has a group of neighbors or concerned citizens, I'm happy to meet with you in person if you want. I've spent a lot of time in people's living rooms and community centers, uh, congregational halls, and all sorts of things around Texas, because these projects sometimes really bring neighbors together, and that's the first time you may meet your neighbor. And there is strength in understanding with neighbors and the numbers. there is a value to that and being able to work together. So that is a service that we offer that is no charge of you to you. So if you want to take advantage of that during this new time period where we're spending a lot more time on Zoom, everybody is, or another virtual platform, I am willing to get together, and I'll be happy to wear a mask if anybody is concerned.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, if you'd like to schedule something like that too, just let me know, post follow-up in an email and we'll get that set for you. All right.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Avalon, for setting this thing up, and I appreciate it. Any feedback is welcome. So thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Good night.